Hi there everyone, welcome to Tech Ravers. Back in 2005, Capcom, the developers of Resident Evil, were at a crossroads. Having already released 3 successful games with a fixed camera angle, they knew it was time for the series to evolve with the new generation of gaming consoles. Their preview footage at the E3 convention in 2004 revealed a brand new third-person perspective for the game that was both revolutionary and exciting. The camera was extremely close to the main character Leon's shoulder, giving the player an intimate view of the action. They also introduced contextual commands that allow the buttons on the controller to change function depending on the situation. This breathed new life into the game and transformed the entire action genre forever. When Resident Evil 4 later was released to the public, it quickly earned high ratings and numerous Game of the Year awards. And despite being over 18 years old, the game still holds up well today, with only slightly outdated graphics and controls. In 2019, the developers at Capcom proved their ability to update classic games with their fantastic remake of Resident Evil 2. However, they later stumbled with the third game in the series, which received mixed reviews because of their decision to ruthlessly cut and paste from the source material until the original was unrecognizable. But when it comes to the Resident Evil 4 remake, Capcom seems to have realized there's no need for an extensive overhaul, and because of this haven't made any significant changes to the game, or in other words, exactly how I want it. Making a remake of a classic game is a tricky business, but Capcom has pulled it off impressively. They've managed to maintain the game's fundamental essence, which is critical since I think many will agree that the original game is a true gaming masterpiece. Although the storyline, environment and gameplay have all been altered in a few ways, the game's heart remains intact. The game's controls have been updated to feel more modern and in line with 2023 standards. For example, players can now finally aim while on the move, a feature that was not present in the original 2005 game. While the original game is undoubtedly cherished by fans, time has had its impact, making it apparent that some changes were necessary to keep it relevant. The game has undergone a significant graphical overhaul spanning several generations. The visual improvements are impressive, and although the PS5 and PC version of the game is visually stunning, it's worth noting that the game also looks great on the Steam Deck, which I'm using starting now. And despite being a less powerful device, the game's graphic and visual effects are still very impressive on the small screen, proving the game's design and artistry can translate well across different platforms. I'm using CryoUtilities on my Steam Deck, by the way, which basically is scripts and utilities to improve performance in Linux, making most games run a little smoother and with higher FPS. I will leave a link to that in the video description, and for me the game averages about 35 to 40 FPS with occasional drops here and there, but the game's natural pace makes it harder to notice these drops than if you were playing an FPS shooter, for example. The game utilizes light and shadows in a way that were not possible 18 years ago, resulting in a stunning and immersive visual experience. The game's aesthetics are still present, but with added depth and extra features, creating a more comprehensive and engaging package than the original. The combat and action sequences in Resident Evil 4 Remake are always very cool and smooth. Quick-time events are a thing of the past, and the increased mobility combined with various modern additions such as parrying and stealth takedowns make them flow like running water. The weapons feel and sound wonderful, oppressively heavy, and even though the enemies may not be as intelligent as they once were, rather the opposite, they are still always very fun to fight. Their bodies react believably to my shots, their knees buckle, their heads explode like piñatas, and even towards the end there are no bullet sponge effects. It's also possible that some of the satisfaction depends on the extremely well calibrated balance of the difficulty level. I never have too much ammunition or too good weapons, nor are the enemies ever too many or too easy. Sure, I could die a few times or even more in some fights, but on hardcore, the highest difficulty level of the 3 and the recommended level if you have ever played Resident Evil 4 before, the game really comes into its own in terms of horror and survival. There's also a brand new reward system based on side missions. The gun merchant gives you smaller tasks such as finding blue medallions, snakes, rats or larger enemies to kill, which can be traded for specific rewards. These challenges are often measured and appropriately difficult for the reward, encouraging me to revisit certain areas or to be extra vigilant when searching the environments. The shooting range rewards have also been given a new look and now consists of tokens that I can exchange for key change with different percentage-based properties. But I won't say more about that because I don't want to spoil it for you. Other things that have been remade or cut entirely are some of the humor elements from before, and the girl Leon is looking for, Ashley, she now has different personality traits. Back in 2005, things were a bit different on the political front, if you understand what I mean, and back then, when Leon stumbled upon Ashley in a jail cell 18 years ago, it was clear that she had some trouble of taking care of herself, to say the least. The sequences with her in it, both her whining and her inability to defend herself against the ganados, were some of the more criticized parts of the original game. Thankfully, Capcom has ironed out these gameplay issues in the remake, and I also think that the way Ashley and the US federal agent Ingrid Hannigan clung to Leon in the original game probably wouldn't fly in today's social climate. Jokes about Ashley's lack of injury when she jumps off a cliff and lands on her rear, or the female zombie with an axe in her head that Leon comments on with "guess there's no sex discrimination here," are not included in the remake. I'd say that the humor is toned down a lot in the whole game for both good and bad. This particular part about the remake actually surprises me somewhat. If Capcom truly believes that the humor in the original is outdated, which I can understand if they do, then why couldn't they have added new jokes or developed the characters in different ways? Simply removing such an essential element of the game feels like a significant drawback, no matter how I try to justify it. It pains me to say this because the rest of the Resident Evil 4 remake is a remarkable example of how a remake should be executed. Resident Evil 4 was an incredible game that has now successfully transitioned into a new generation. As expected, debates about the necessity of remakes are inevitable, and the answer is not always clear-cut and depends on the specific game. However, in the case of Resident Evil 4, there is no doubt that this was worth a remake. With 18 years gone by, significant advancement has been made, particularly in the graphics and gameplay area, which have attracted a new generation of gamers. Having played it for over 20 hours now, I found myself yearning for more. And in essence, playing Resident Evil 4 Remake is as enjoyable as ever, and it definitely earns the highest possible rating. And that's been it for this review of the new Resident Evil 4 Remake that will release on PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox One and Xbox Series X on March 24th. But before I leave you, I just want to scroll through my settings for the game on Steam Deck. Using these settings together with the CryoUtilities that I talked about earlier in the review will probably give you the best possible experience. If you have other settings that works even better, don't hesitate to share them with me in a comment down below. If you liked this video, please give it a like as it really helps me out, and don't forget to subscribe if you want more content like this in your YouTube feed. Catch you in the next one, thanks for watching.